What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Cine James Movie Talk. I am your host, Mr. Cine James himself, and today I am doing my full spoiler review on the new horror movie, Backrooms. But before we get into that, you know what to do. If you like the show, you like the content, you're listening to me on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're listening to me on Spotify, tap that bell, tap that follow, show me some love, and as always, I greatly appreciate all of your support. So we are going to be doing, normally when I do these, I will do a non-spoiler review, and then eventually, I will do a full spoiler review. The movie has been out for a bit. A lot of videos and stuff have circulated on social media, so I decided this time to go ahead and just do everything all in once and do a full spoiler review. So, again, this is a full spoiler review, so if you've not seen the movie yet, don't check this episode out, go see the movie, and then come back and watch this episode. Before we get into my full spoiler review and discussion, let's run through some of the stats of this movie. So Backrooms was released on May 29th. It was produced by James Wan, which James Wan is no stranger to the horror movie genre. He brought us Saw, Insidious, and the Conjuring universe. This movie was directed by Kane Parsons, and I want to say this, a huge shout to Mr. Parsons. At 20 years old, directed and brought us this movie. At 20 years old, that is absolutely amazing. And with what he gave us with this movie, regardless of what my opinions may be of this movie, with what he was able to deliver with this, I am looking forward to not only any potential sequels to Backrooms, but other future projects that he may do as well. So again, this is an amazing accomplishment to be able to bring us this movie at 20 years old. So again, huge shout out to Kane Parsons. And even something more is that this movie was a web series. Started as a web series when he was, I think his name was Kane Pixels. I believe that was the name. At 16 years old. So again, huge shout out to Kane Parsons for being 20 years old and directing this movie. This movie stars, and I apologize, I may not get these names right. This movie stars Chiwetel Ejiofor and Renate Rienzve. I believe I said their names right. Again, I apologize if I didn't. Movie had a budget of around $10 million, and at the time of this recording, I do believe the current box office has it sitting at around 200 or a little over $200 million, which again, for a $10 million budget, it's more than made back. It's money, and it's still continuing to make money. So that's really impressive. This movie, as I said, it gained traction as a web series in 2019 by Kane Parsons. At the time, again, Kane Pixels. This is a liminal space movie, what they call liminal space filming. So with all of those stats out of the way, let's get into my spoiler thoughts and discussion on the movie Backrooms. Excuse me. So my initial thoughts to Backrooms. So I've seen this movie twice now. And the first time I watched it, I was really confused with this movie. I mean, I understood some of it, but the first time I watched it, I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really sure what I was watching. Visually, the movie's awesome. But the first time I watched it, I got to be honest, I was confused with it. Seeing it a second time, after I watched it the first time, I went back and I did a little bit of research on the Backroom, some of the lore with that. And watching it the second time, I had a better time watching it a second time, having a better understanding of it. But what I will say with watching it two times on both accounts, and again, this is just my opinion to this, I did not find this movie scary or terrifying at all. Now, having said that, though, I do understand why the general consensus and why a lot of people look at this movie as a scary and terrifying movie. It's perspective, right? And even though I didn't think this movie was scary or terrifying, I understand why, just based on some of the claustrophobic nature of the movie, how a lot of this movie and some of these scenes are very unsettling. Just the sound in this movie, the tone, the visuals, the atmosphere of this movie. So all of those things, I can understand why a lot of people view this movie as terrifying and scary. But for me, I did not see it that way. I was not scared or terrified with this movie at all. However, I do find this movie interesting. I do find the story interesting, and I am looking forward to where they take this story. I am looking forward, which I do believe they are going to be doing a sequel to this movie, so I'm looking forward to seeing the story expand. And as I said, after watching this movie the first time, it interested me to go back and do some research and understand a little bit more of the lore of the Backrooms. So overall, I thought the movie visually looked good. The tone, the atmosphere, the pacing of this movie, the sound in this movie, the acting, I thought was good. I just did not find this movie to be scary or terrifying. But again, having said that, I understand why a lot of people do, because it's all perspective, right? So there are things in this movie that I can understand why a lot of people would find it scary and terrifying. So let's kind of go ahead and let's run through this movie. So the movie opens up with the Async logo, and we get a found footage, which is dated 1990, which is where this movie takes place. It looks like we are picking up with an Async employee who looks like something happened, and he is trying to find his way. He's going through the back rooms, and it looks like he's moving fast, like something is perhaps chasing him. He appears to be lost also, and he also is calling for help. As he's going through, we also see the no credit needed sign from Captain Clark's furniture store. So again, showing you that this is taking place around this found footage is taking place around the same time as the movie itself. As he continues in and he's making his calls for help, he sees an entity. And this entity ends up chasing him until he is caught and supposedly killed. The footage then cuts off, and it looks like that it's being viewed on a monitor. And when the monitor cuts off, you can see reflections of people as if they're watching this. And then we cut to our title of Backrooms. We then go to, after the title, we go to what looks like a demolition project being taken place, and we are introduced to Mary, Dr. Mary, who is a therapist. And then after that scene, we then get introduced to Clark, who is the owner of Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire furniture store. There's some voiceover of Mary talking, which leads into a therapy session with her and Clark, where we start to get an understanding of Clark's character and where he's at in his life. And the scenes with Clark and Mary, I like a lot throughout this whole movie. Their chemistry is really good. I like their dialogues back and forth. They presented it very well. They go into, as she's talking with him, they go into a role-playing scene where Mary plays his wife, and they role play the night that she kicked him out. And this is where we get to see how Clark is wired, and we get to see his frustrations. And we find out really early within this that he's also an architect, or he was an architect. And from what we can understand in this, he had to go and he got the furniture store to help support his family and also support his wife, who, from what we gather in this, is going to law school. And through this role playing, we find out that he blames, and he puts a lot of frustration and the blame on his wife for where he's currently at, I guess, where they're currently at in their life, and why he has the furniture store. So again, I like the dialogue with this. I like the chemistry back and forth. I like what this scene sets up for our characters. And then we go from this scene, and then we go to him, which is a funny scene. We go to him filming his commercial for his furniture store, Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire, and he's dressed up in the pirate suit, and he has like the peg leg, but you can see his leg bent up behind him. And then he goes towards the end of the filming of the commercial. He sits down in the chair, and then the chair breaks, and then he gets upset, and he asks for the video to be cut. And this is where we are also introduced to our other characters who are employees at his store, Bobby and Kat. We also then get to where we see the electrician coming in because he's having electrical problems in his store. And then when the electrician goes to the panel box, he notices it's got a weird layout with some of the switches, which is kind of foreshadowing to what is about to come ahead. We also then go to Mary watching. She's sitting at home watching her television, and she sees a commercial advertising her books. And then we go from there to finding out, and we go to Clark finding out that he is actually, since his wife kicked him out, he is actually staying at the furniture store. These electrical issues, though, while he's staying at the furniture store, they continue, and then Clark heads out of the furniture store. He's frustrated with all the electrical issues, so he leaves, and while he's driving, it sounds like he's listening to one of Mary's audiobooks, and it appears to be that he goes and he parks outside of his house, and he's just sitting there, and it looks like he's just thinking, reflecting while he's listening to the audiobooks. We then cut to the next night, and before we go into the next night, I like how they're setting up Clark's character. You really, at the opening of this, you do get an understanding, and I caught this even the first time around. This was some of the stuff that I did get to understand watching the first time, and even more so the second time, was we get an understanding of where Clark's at mentally. We get an understanding really quick. We actually get an understanding a lot of where both our main characters, Mary and Clark, are at respectively in their lives. So we then go to the next night, and this is where things start to pick up. We go to the next night where, again, Clark is staying at the store. He's watching a commercial for another furniture store when all of a sudden the TV cuts to what looks like an image of the Backrooms. So then, and then he has more electrical problems, and he starts to get upset, and he goes to the panel, and he just gets mad, and he cuts all of the power off. And as he's walking away, he looks over to the wall, and he notices a yellow slit in the wall. This is where we get the first introduction, if you will, where he clips into the back rooms. He goes into the back rooms, and he kind of goes back and forth. He goes into the back rooms, and he comes back out, trying to figure out what is happening here. And as he goes into the back rooms, the first thing we see, which was in the trailer, we see the stack of the furniture piled up in the middle of the room. He then explores the back rooms, and he sees furniture and other items as he is walking around. And then he starts to hear voices, and he follows those voices to a cardboard cutout where it looks like it has a little recording box that is playing those voices. And anybody can tell me, comment, leave a message. I think from what I've gathered with this and from what I am understood, and I could be wrong in this, I believe that what he's hearing, they're different greetings, different languages, different greetings, but I believe from what I have understood, I think what I looked into was that these are actually recordings from the Voyager satellite, the Voyager probe that we sent out to space back in the late 60s, early 70s, where we sent this out. And what we did with the Voyager satellite that we sent out, which is currently still going out and it's way past into deep space, we put different artifacts, different things on this probe, on this satellite, and we took and made a gold record and placed it on there, and it has recordings of different languages saying hello, welcome, in case in the event we were to ever come across any signs of life out there in the galaxy, out there in space somewhere. So that's just a little side thing to what the Voyager satellite is, and I believe, again, someone can tell me if I'm wrong in this, I believe what we are hearing it's a rumor, it's a theory. I haven't really seen anything that's 100% concrete yet on it, but that we are hearing the different greetings in the different languages as given in the Voyager satellite. He then finds a bag as he's walking through. He then finds a bag. And this bag has an ID in it from the Async company, and it is, I think if I say the name right, is Naren Warren. And that is the guy, we come to find out, that is the guy at the beginning of the movie that had the camera, the found footage we had at the beginning of the movie. That was the guy that was going around the back rooms being chased by the entity, calling for help, and then eventually was caught by the entity. And again, we are presumed he is dead. He crawls through he sees the bag, and he sees a little opening on the other side. So he crawls through the opening, which takes him into another room. And then within this room, we see like the little like shoes and stuff that are kind of halfway into the ground. And we see the chair that's kind of angled, kind of reflecting on when he shot the commercial. He sat on the chair and he broke it. So we see the kind of like some of those reflections. And then as he's in there, he appears to have heard something. So he goes back to the spot where he crawled out of the little hole in the wall, and he looks down and he sees the bag, and he's asking if anyone is there. And this is where we start to get, as far as our journey so far with Clark, this is where we see objects being thrown, which leads to Clark running to get out of the back rooms, which this is our first hint that there is something else in the back rooms with Clark. We then go to what appears to be a reel-to-reel audio device playing the sounds. Playing the sounds, the greeting sounds that we heard. And we then see there is a camera footage being viewed on a monitor by an individual. They're watching Clark walk through the back rooms. And we seen that earlier when Clark was walking through. He looked up and saw the camera. So this is that shot that we see from the other perspective, and we see an individual sitting there watching this footage. And as the story goes here, and as this movie goes, we will find out who that individual is. Clark, then we get to the scene where Clark goes to Mary and he tells her about the back rooms. He describes the back rooms, and this is a great way to describe it. And this is where we get the analogy of the back rooms, and Clark says that it's like describing a dog to someone who's never seen one before and then asking them to draw it. I think that's a great analogy, and I think that is the best way, especially after watching the back rooms a second time. I think that is the best way to describe the back rooms. And then you can kind of see it. This is where, again, the chemistry and acting back and forth with them, where Mary is not believing. She's really looking at this as far-fetched. And we can also kind of tell within this dialogue, within their meeting here, that Clark has been going to the back room. Some time has passed now, and Clark has been repeatedly, he's been at the back rooms now for some time. And she shows her a map that he's drawn, again, being an architect. He shows her a map that he's drawn of the back rooms, which again would indicate that he has been going back now for some time to be able to draw this map out. And he tries to show her what he has discovered thus far. And again, she's not really believing him. He's sensing that. So he basically tells her that I'm going to prove to you that this is real. And then he leaves her office. He then goes to his employees, Bobby and Kat, and he asks them to come to the store to film for some research, which leads to them going into the back rooms. And this is where we get the good scene where they're going down the bottom, and we see both Bobby and Kat being going through the back rooms, but kind of being hesitant. More Kat than Bobby. Bobby comes through and tells Kat she needs to come through, and then they follow Clark, and this is where we start to really pick things up. So we go to where Clark is tying a rope around Bobby, and he wants him to go down. They find this chute, this corridor, and it's a new area that has been unexplored. So he ties Bobby up, puts a rope around Bobby's waist, and they send him down, and he's got the camera. So we're back into the found footage viewpoint. So Bobby goes down the chute, ends up in this new room, and this room just looks like it's full of just laundry and junk. It is just very messy and very, very trashy. So as he's down here, as he tries to go forward and pursue forward into the next rooms, he then sees something that scares him, and it causes him to run back up the chute. Again, we're still in the found footage mode. So he gets back up to the top. He's yelling for them to for Clark and Nat to pull him back up. So when he gets back up there, he is panicking. He wants to be released from the rope. Well, as in the process of Clark trying to get the rope off of him, Bobby is then pulled back down the chute. And then in the process of him being pulled back down, both Clark and Nat get knocked down the chute as well. And then when we land, we then see Bobby, we see a trail of blood. And again, this is where we're starting to pick up. We see a trail of blood, and we see Bobby being pulled through like a little door chute, and this is where both Clark and Kat are freaking out, and Kat runs to the other room to try to follow him, and then we hear Kat screaming. And then at this point, this is where Clark picks up the camera. We're still in found footage mode. He is running through the different areas of this new Backrooms space. And then we get to where he runs. He's going through all the different rooms, and he gets to a Christmas themed room. Okay, and it's dark, and the only illumination that you get is from the lights on the Christmas tree, and it's playing the Christmas music. And as he's going around the he's going around the Christmas tree, he runs into what we would find out to be called a still life, and it ends up chasing him. And what we can tell from this that it is it's a female entity person, and it is chasing him out of the room. And then he goes on a run through the different areas, and he ends up in a swimming pool area. And this is where he ends up hearing Kat. I apologize. He ends up hearing Kat through the walls. So he puts the camera down in the corner, and then he goes to the wall, and he's trying to find where Kat's at. And then we see the camera. We see the camera get picked up. We don't know what's picking it up. We don't know who's picking it up. But Kat can see the camera getting picked up, and she's trying to tell Clark there's something behind him. So as she's yelling that out, he then turns around, and this is where we get the cut, and we go. We then go to a cut where we see a room that is messy and dirty with flies and newspaper coverings over the windows. We see a little girl sitting in this room. We come to find out now as this little girl tries to open the window, there is a lady that comes to stop her. We come to find out that this is Mary as a child, and that is her mother, who we find out was very paranoid with her and kept her in this space and would not let her go outside. And then as they're both sitting there in this room, they get a knock on the door, and then the door is blasted open. We find out this is a dream because Mary then wakes up, and she goes to get the piece of concrete, the concrete hand. So if you remember at the beginning of the movie, when they were doing the demolition project, there were handprints in the concrete, and we saw those getting ready to be knocked away, and she took one of the concrete handprints, which could lead you to believe that that demolition was of her childhood home. So she then wakes up from her dream. She goes over to the piece of the concrete hand, and then she gets a phone call. The voicemail picks it up, and it is Clark saying that he has opened the window and he won't be coming back. So Mary, concerned with this, she heads to the store. Okay. And then as she goes to the store, we then go to a scene where there is a guy making popcorn and sitting down with his family. We find out that this is the guy that we saw watching the camera footage of Clark earlier, that when Clark was in the Backrooms. And now, so this guy's sitting down with his family eating popcorn, and he sees the Captain Clark Ottoman Empire commercial. And then he realizes that is the guy, that Captain Clark is the guy that he saw on the camera footage in the back rooms. So then after that, we cut back to Mary going into the store looking for Clark. There's nobody in this store. And the only cars that are in the parking lot are Clark's car and Bobby and Kat's. She then goes into the store. She goes downstairs, and she sees as she goes down to the area where the entrance to the Backrooms is, she sees a large map layout that is very similar to the paper drawing of the map that Clark tried to show her in their last therapy session. She then goes to the door. She sees the blue tape outline of the door that Clark made, and then she finds herself now into the Backrooms. So as Mary, she starts to make her way through the Backrooms, and again, we're getting a lot of good visuals. Again, this movie visually is really, really awesome. And then even as she's walking through, there's such an unsettling tone, and atmosphere with this. So, which again, like I said before, I definitely understand why a lot of people find this movie scary, creepy, terrifying, all that good stuff. So as Mary's making her way around the back room, she comes to a wall. There's a wall with drawings on it. And there is a lot. There's a lot on this wall that people can deep dive from if you pause it and you look at it, which I'm sure people have already analyzed this wall. But just to kind of summarize it up, we see like two hazmat suit people, one on each corner. We see the words unrealized down at the bottom. Then we also see the words here and now is a two-way street. Why think in terms of magic with a question mark? And then in the middle, we see a large drawing of what appears to be, it looks like, because you can see the peg leg, it looks like a large pirate, and he is throwing a person up. There's just a lot on this wall that anyone can analyze and deep dive with. And again, we talking, as I just said, there's a picture, it looks like a large pirate throwing a person up into the air, which, as we continue to move forward here, could be a little foreshadowing. So as Mary is looking at the wall, she hears a noise behind her. So then she turns around and she finally runs into Clark. And then as she is talking to Clark, they both hear a noise as if something is approaching them. And then as we're really building the suspense of what we may think is approaching them, Clark goes behind her and he chokes her out. And then as she is knocked unconscious, she goes into a little dream sequence where it shows Mary there at the hospital with her mom, and it shows her mom being taken away in a wheelchair. And then we see Mary back in her house. And then it looks like we're going through different levels. It goes down from one level, and each level kind of simplifies a little bit more, less and less. And then it goes down through the different levels, it looks like, of the back room. So now, again, as we're starting to see perhaps a little bit more and more, since Mary now has been in the back rooms, now parts of her life are slowly starting to be copied into the back rooms. So as she comes to, we get to the table scene. And this is where we are further introduced to the still lives. So we have the guy in the wheelchair, we have his still life, we have the bearded still life, and then we have the redhead still life in the corner that was the first one that Clark encountered with the Christmas tree. And I'm going to apologize, but I do believe, and again, the chat can tell me, that each one of these still lives, they do actually have names. And from what I understand from watching this movie, and more so even the second time, that the redheaded still life is actually supposed to be his wife. But this is where we get a really good scene here with some good dialogue and chemistry back and forth with Clark and Mary. And this is where Clark kind of starts to tell her a little bit about what the back rooms are. He does in that therapy session the first time, but now he's been in there. Now he's a part of the back rooms, and he explains to her what the still lifes are, that basically that these are visuals of people that he may have seen in his real life, and that the back rooms copies those visuals and makes them the still lives. They don't copy them, though, to 100% perfection. They're not exact, spot-on copies of their real-life counterparts. But these are people that perhaps that Clark may have encountered in his life in the real world. And then this also kind of further goes to the thought that the redhead still life is his wife, because when he gets to talking about her, he doesn't really say much. He just looks back at her, and the way during this scene, the way that he interacts with that still life kind of further goes to that point of her being his wife. And then this is where we get where he talks about the still lives, how they can't feel pain, and that you can also, in the back rooms, you can also eat the still life. So a lot of this stuff, again, is very unsettling. It's very uneasy in some ways, and it's a really I'm not going to say scary tone, but it is kind of creepy a little bit. It does have just a little bit of a creepy, unsettling tone in this scene. And then this is also where we get kind of what we got. This goes back to the beginning of the movie where they had the one therapy session where Mary wanted to do the role play with Clark, where she was his wife, and now this is Clark wanting to do the role play, and he scalps the hair off of the redhead still life and he puts it on Mary. And this is where he's basically recounting. It's basically a redoing of the role playing scene from the therapy session at the beginning of the movie. And in this one, though, they go through, and at this point, too, this is where Mary, she's kind of had enough, and she essentially tells Clark that stop blaming. You blame everything and everyone else and your surroundings for your problems instead of blaming yourself, that you are also a lot of the reason, and you are the cause for a lot of your messes and where you're at in your life. And so we get to that, and where as Mary calls him out on it, then he accepts that he doesn't want to change, and how he doesn't want to change how he is, and that he likes being in the back rooms, and he feels that this is where he's supposed to be. And at this point, Mary just essentially tells him, then don't change. Be who you are. That's fine. Because she's at that place where she wants to get out of the back rooms. And the only way that she feels that she can do that, and again, this scene sets this up and it's really good. The only way that she feels that she can do that is just to tell Clark, you don't have to change. But she does fire back on him, and she does tell him that, hey, listen, you are also, stop blaming. You blame everything else around you, but you are the reason also for your problems, and you are the reason for why you were at where you're at. And just to kind of skip back real quick too, as he's going through and talking about the still lifes, I forgot about this. When he opens up the fridge, we see the head of Cat there. So now we know that Cat is dead. And that further adds to this table scene. So we now get to where he has now accepted that he doesn't want to change. He belongs in the back rooms. He's okay with that. And then Mary asks for him to let her go. And this is where we see Clark kind of coming back to a little bit. And he decides, yeah, it's time to let you go. You don't belong here. I do. Well, at this moment, this is where we get introduced to our main entity in this movie. And that is Pirate Clark. And again, furthering going to how I think that the redhead still life is his wife, because when she senses that Pirate Clark is coming, she takes off and she runs. The still life is terrified of Pirate Clark, which again could be a portrayal of Clark in his real life with his wife, with the situations and the issues that they had. So as Pirate Clark enters the room, Clark then tells him that everything's going to be okay. We don't have to change. We can stay the way we are. And this is, again, as I talked about the image on the wall and a little bit of the foreshadowing, this is where Pirate Clark then picks up Clark, and he bites into him and then throwing him against the wall, which you could presume and believe that at this point Clark is dead. And then really quick, this is also before we go any further with it, now that we have had the reveal of Pirate Clark, if we go back to the beginning of the movie where we had the found footage, this also now I think we can confirm that the entity in the found footage at the beginning with the async employee trying to get away with, I believe his name again was Narn. This is where we see Pirate Clark capture him. So that way, I think at this point now we can confirm that is Pirate Clark. His name was Naren. I apologize, Naren Warren. So we see him at the beginning, and he's running. When he's running away from the entity, and then he runs into that. The room, and then he tries to go back out the room, and he's met with the entity. We can now confirm. I'm pretty confident that was Pirate Clark. So then now the chase is on. So now Mary is running away from Pirate Clark. And now as she's running away, we now go into what is her back room. So now she goes into a room and there's a bunch of different houses that look very similar to her. So now the Backrooms has now started to copy her reality, which really quick, I want to kind of go on the side thing now, kind of giving you a little bit of an explanation of what the Backrooms is, just from what we've seen so far, is basically the Backrooms copies the life, the surroundings of the person that enters into the Backrooms. It doesn't do a complete perfect copy as we see with the still lives and everything, but it does what it can to copy the reality, copy the surroundings, and absorb that from the person that is entering the Backrooms. So every person's Backrooms could be different. So now with Mary being in there, and for the time she has been in there, we are now seeing her version of the Backrooms. So as the chase goes on, she goes from, and this is again, and I want to say this again, this is where we see a lot of the good visuals with this movie as Pirate Clark is chasing Mary. Very impressive. Just with all the multi-layers, we get into the one room where she's trying to escape and it has all the different multi-levels. Absolutely amazing visuals. And so we then get to where now Captain Clark's store is now absorbed into and copied into the Backrooms. I should say copy more than absorbed, because that's what the Backrooms does. But now she is running away. She tries to escape from the furniture store and realizes when she goes to open the door, the Backrooms has stopped. There is no way out. So then she turns around and then there is Captain Clark, and then they have the chase inside the furniture store where Mary does finally decide to fight against Captain Clark, and she knocks and breaks his wooden leg, causing Pirate Clark to fall down. And then as we see then before that, though, we see again the cardboard cutout with the audio recording playing. So circle back to that. After she knocks down Pirate Clark, she falls back into the cardboard cutout, which it looks like it sets off, she kind of triggers some kind of an alarm. All the smoke and all these things go off, and then so as this alarm is going off and she's going through it, we then get Pirate Clark attacking her one more time, and then this is where she takes out the concrete handprint and she's smashing Pirate Clark on the face, which causes him to let her go. She is able to escape from Pirate Clark, and she goes down a narrow corridor. And as she's going through the corridor, we can see Pirate Clark trying to get through. He cannot get through. As she comes out, we then see the hazmat suits again, and they take, which we are presuming that these are, we will find out also as well, that these are async employees. They now take Mary and they get her out of the Backrooms, and we see them go through. They don't go through they don't do what looks like, they don't do clipping. They have what looks like, which again, this is where it's going to be interesting to see what the next movie will show, because now we're showing, we're getting to see something else that's interesting with this. And as they're bringing Mary out, it looks like it's a big opening, and they go into another large room. And so then we see they're taking Mary through some hallways, and then she's walking with people in lab coats. And as she's walking, she looks to a room, and she sees Pirate Clark laid out. Looks like they've captured Pirate Clark, and he's strapped down, laid down on a table in a room with lab coats, where it looks like they're doing some research, they're doing some examinations of Pirate Clark. And then we get to where she's sitting in a room, and we see the guy that we saw from earlier that was watching Clark on the monitor, and that was sitting down with his family watching the Captain Clark commercial. We find out that his name is Phil, and he represents a company called Async. And Async was an MRI development company. They made MRI machines, and then he says they don't do that anymore, which again, this whole scene for me, and he's asking her how she got into the back room. He's asking her questions and things about the back rooms, and she goes, she gives him the same analogy that was given to her by Clark about the analogy of the backrooms is basically trying to describe a dog to someone who's never seen a dog, and then asking them to draw it, which I thought was a good callback for her in this. And then it almost kind of seems like there's some other things with this scene where the way that he's talking, the way that Phil is talking with Mary, and you're watching her expressions, you're watching just her face and the way that they're really going in on that. This is almost like he's talking to her now, like he's the therapist and she's the patient, which I thought was I thought that was kind of like a really good flip with the character. And this is where, again, and you can even kind of see where Phil, even though he's working for Async, he's kind of a little hesitant about a lot of the things he's talking about because he keeps looking over to the glass, keeps looking over to the window. Oh, excuse me, which you can presume there's other people on the side of that window, which all of this, for me, it sets up what I'm going to be really interested to see. It's going to set up, I think, the development into the sequel, which I would like to see, and I hope that they do in some ways, that the sequel kind of expands a little bit on Async, how they came to be with the Backrooms. I know that there is some of that in the web series that Kane Parsons did, and there's some of that explained in the lore, but I think from a cinematic standpoint, that is going to be really interesting to focus on in the sequel. So I am looking forward to that. That's what the ending of this movie did for me. This is where I got really interested in the movie, was when we got towards the end and then Async got involved again, because now that left me wanting to know, well, what's their role in all of this? Because again, we go back to when they pulled Mary out of the Backrooms. They appear to have these big rooms, and they appear to have, like, I guess, I don't know if you want to say more ease of access. Like, you get that feeling with them that they have been doing this now for a while. And so I'm, again, really looking forward to see what they deliver that with a sequel. So we get to the end of this now, and the end of this shows, again, the Backrooms. It kind of shows now the Backrooms absorbing more of Mary's life. You get to see her office, her room. You get to see all those things that we saw in the movie earlier from Mary's life being absorbed now into the Backrooms. And then we also now get like the telephone pole showing the missing tags of Bobby and Kat. And then we also get the outside of Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire store now being absorbed into the Backrooms. And as they're showing all these different shots of what's being copied into the Backrooms, we then get what looks like the room that Mary was in with Phil, with Async, but now it's in the Backrooms, and now we are seeing a still life of Mary being created. And that is the end of Backrooms. Again, just to sum up my thoughts, visually, tone, atmosphere, thought the movie was awesome. I did not find, again, I personally, did not find this movie scary or terrifying in any way. Had some creepy elements a little bit, had some unsettling tones here and there, but I also understand why people find this movie horrifying. I definitely understand that from the perspectives I just mentioned. It does have that for a lot of people, and I definitely understand it. Just for me, I didn't see that. But I did see an interesting movie, and I did have a good time. I had a better time the second time around watching this movie than I did the first, because I had a more understanding for what the Backrooms was. So that is going to do it for this episode on the Backrooms. Once again, guys, if you like the show, you like the content, you're listening to me on YouTube, hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're listening to me on Spotify, tap that bell, tap that follow. I appreciate all the love and support. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Cinejames Movie Talk. And also make sure you check out my other new show that I'm co-hosting along with the Big Rob Theory called Super Cinema Bros. We just released our first episode on the Star Wars prequels, and our second episode is getting ready to release on the Star Wars original trilogy. And then we will be doing our next two episodes will be on the Star Wars Disney sequel trilogy and then the Star Wars spin-off movies. As far as Cinejames Movie Talk goes, my next episodes, I will be doing a full spoiler review on Mortal Kombat 2. I will be doing a discussion on the new Masters of the Universe and tying that into the 1987, the version from my childhood, the 1987 Dolph Lundgren, Frank Langella Masters of the Universe. I also have my episode coming up on the 35th anniversary of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, one of my all-time favorite movies and without question one of the greatest action movies ever made. I also have coming up my full spoiler discussion on The Mandalorian and Grogu. And then we are just a couple weeks away from the release of Supergirl. I will be having my non-spoiler review on that when it releases. And then we are a little over a month away from the much anticipated Spider-Man Brand New Day. But from now until then as well, aside from the episodes that I just mentioned, I'm going to have some more episodes in between that discussing different topics. And then also, again, please make sure you're checking out my other new show with the Big Rob Theory, Super Cinema Brothers. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I will see you at the box office.